Welcome, friends. Welcome to the kitchen. And today I have my friend Jamie, who is a butcher, author, educator.
All those things.
All of those things.
Yeah.
And we have a side of hog that we are going to break down.
That's right.
What can you tell me about this pig?
This pig was raised on a small family farm outside of Stratford.
Okay.
And it was raised to a weight of just under about 300 pounds is what they raise kind of like commercial weighted pigs out to.
Okay.
And it ended up dressing out at about just over 200 pounds.
Okay. And it's slaughtered in a provincial slaughterhouse.
That's
so it is graded? Do they grade it?
No, actually, they don't grade pork at all. They're just killing, and the stamps provide us with evidence that it was actually killed within an Ontario-approved facility. So pork doesn't receive a grading.
Why doesn't it receive a grading?
It's just not something that the meat industry ever deemed necessary. The only meat that is graded is beef, lamb, poultry, pork. None of it's graded.
Huh. I did not know that.
So there's a huge sliding scale of quality, I guess. You know,
Okay.
I mean, listen, beef grading doesn't tell us the end all to be all to if that animal was raised properly or if it ate a good diet or was outside or indoors. None of that. It doesn't tell us any of that.
It just tells you marbling.
Exactly. It's a marble score.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So we don't have that in pork.
So we've got this pig, half a hog, laying in front of us, and you do butchering classes where you teach people how to break it down.
Yep.
Where do you start in your class? And we'll just go through it that way.
So what we do is we go over a basic anatomy, and I can easily point that out. We have a head-on side of pork.
Okay.
Right? That doesn't work into the primals of the animal for some reason. They decided that the head's not a primal. So.
But there's so much good stuff in that head.
Yeah, and we're certainly going to get to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Great.
The four primals are actually kind of marked by these four stamps. So we've got our shoulder, we've got our loin, our belly, and our ham.
Is that on purpose?
Yes. So the abattoir knows that if they're not sending it out as a side, then the next step would be to send it out in those primals.
Okay.
And then as a level of not only traceability, but I think peace of mind for the people that are on the receiving end of the product.
So at the butcher shop or the restaurant,
That's right.
they know that it's been inspected.
Exactly. I mean, listen, and then it can get further processed down and those stamps become irrelevant, but then the packaging that the pork gets shipped out in then itself has a stamp on the box.
Okay.
So they're covering all the bases.
Well, and I really like seeing this, that's the farm
That's right.
that this was raised at.
Yeah, so the information that they provided us is, you know what, these guys go above and beyond because we don't always have access to the information. We might have the weights, but they have specifically mentioned that it is an ABF, so antibiotic-free
Okay.
side of pork as well too. The side weight, the whole weight, and then the farm that it was produced at.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's start breaking it down.
Great.
Where do we go?
Let's take the head off.
Excellent.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'll do this one just because it can be a little bit of a tricky one to do.
Okay.
But I will certainly be putting you to work throughout the process.
Excellent. I'm going to run around to the other side of the camera and do a close-up. So
Okay.
I can actually...
So I'm just going to go right behind the ear in this deep crevice, and I'm just going to make a squared off cut all the way down through the jowl. Okay.
Cool.
So just going to go through. And then what I'm looking for is what's called the atlas joint, and that's the joint that connects the head to the body. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to find, and this might be a little bit something that people may or may not want to see, but the simple fact is sometimes you got to get in a little bit down and dirty in the butchery process in order to get the head off.
Okay, so this is the head of the pig. If that last bit kind of grossed you out a little bit, it's part of the meat. It's part of the process. You have to accept that that is part of the process.
That's right.
So the head has a lot of stuff on it. I'm excited to get to this, but we'll do that in another episode.
Okay.
So we'll put this to the side in
Sure,
one of
I
these
can take
bins.
that if you like.
Okay.
Yep.
What's up next?
Okay, so this is where I'm going to need your help because what
Okay.
we're going to do is we're actually going to flip the whole carcass over so we're looking at the inside of the carcass.
Okay.
So, a few different things going on here that we can just talk about before we start dismantling it
Okay.
because we've got two things that I think are of value to us.
I'm already excited.
Yeah.
I am already
should be.
excited. Leaf lard.
That's right. That's going to be one of the things that we take out, actually. So when the carcass is warm and they've eviscerated it, meaning they've taken out all the insides,
Yep.
this fat kind of just lies right here on the belly. So what they do is after the animal's been eviscerated, they just kind of peel the fat and they let it sit and after the animal chills down, the carcass chills down overnight, it kind of like solidifies in more of like a cylindrical shape. So then we've got our leaf fat there. So it is valuable and to be kept and used for later use. And then we've also got a kidney here.
So I've seen this before. Why do they leave the kidney in the carcass?
So I like to think, and I could probably be corrected by a multitude of people out there,
Sure.
but because they do an incision in the kidney and they're looking for any type of like,
That's an inspection mark.
that's an inspection mark. So
Okay.
they're looking for any type of like red light that would have them want to inspect the carcass even further.
Okay.
Right? So I like to think of it as peace of mind, but I also know that this is like a really tasty part too. So it's twofold for me.
What do you do with the kidney?
So the kidneys can be, I mean, all sorts of things, right? So you can just kind of boil them. You can take the membrane off. There's also a membrane on the inside here that we can take out if we cut the kidney in half, and then that can get chopped up and put in like your meat pies. It can be ground into the ground meat.
Yep.
I mean, there's all sorts of things.
Cool.
Yeah. So what I'm going to get you to do is just grab the leaf lard and then just pull it back towards the ham, and it'll just pull right out. Yep. If it's attached to that kidney, which it shouldn't be too big of a problem for you. There we go. There it is.
So you render this down,
Yeah.
and it's amazing for all kinds of things. It's amazing for deep frying. It's amazing for making pastry.
That's right.
Pastry is incredible with this. So this is fantastic. We will make use of this.
Yeah, for sure. I'll put that in with the head. And then the kidney, which is attached to the carcass, you can just take the knife and just cut it off where it kind of meets up
Just
with
where
the
it meets
carcass.
up? Okay.
Yep. Then we're good.
Easy.
One kidney.
So presumably the other kidney's on the other half.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so what we do now is we break it up into the 4 primals, and we already kind of talked about that a little bit before. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to take off the back ham.
Okay.
Okay, and I know that you have plans for said ham. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it in its most natural shape.
I'm going to try and make prosciutto. So come on back to see if that happens.
Yeah, I would be so excited to see the process.
It's like a year-long process, though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So you'll have to stay
You'll
tuned
have to
for
stay
that.
tuned for that, yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be looking for a marker that we like to use. And I'm looking for this H bone,
Okay.
this pelvic bone right here. So it almost kind of looks like, what's the most likeness to this? Like a comma?
Yeah.
Let's use that as our mark. So roughly about an inch in to the carcass from the head of the H-bone, we're going to make a mark. And we're just going to take our knife and we're just going to trace a line like so.
Okay.
Okay, so you can go ahead and do that.
Okay. So about an inch in.
Yeah,
And I just trace a mark like that.
that looks great.
Okay.
So now let's take the handsaw, and because we've traced that line, we can follow that line. And I need you to keep the saw as horizontal as possible.
Okay.
And you're just going to need to make a few passes until you get through the bone.
Roughly.
Keep the saw horizontal and just follow the line. The bite is on the push, meaning that's where the teeth are running.
Okay.
Yeah, and it won't take very much effort. And then you're through. That's it.
So that's through the backbone.
That's it. Yep.
Cool. Done with the saw?
Done with the saw. Yeah, we'll use the larger knife and we'll just finish off that cut.
And so it's the same, just... Is there a specific motion that you're supposed to use with the knife when you do this?
Well, just a long fluid pass is ideal.
Okay.
If I find people are just making small nicks, then they get what would be known as like a shingling effect.
Ah.
And we're just looking for nice long fluid passes.
Slow movement. Okay.
Yep. There's your ham.
So this... Cool. It's a little bit daunting.
Oh, please. I think the biggest thing is actually just having a big enough bin to put it in.
I think I've got it covered. So,
Awesome.
just in case everybody... So this is the bone that we were pointing to earlier.
Yep.
Cool.
So that bone actually is something that I'm gonna want to remove for you to get it prosciutto ready. I don't know if that's something you want to tackle now or.
We'll tackle that in the next video.
Okay, great.
So we'll talk about prepping this specifically for prosciutto.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Perfect.
Oh,
You can just put it right under that top. Great.
okay. So
What's next is the shoulder, and I'll tackle the shoulder. There's a few different steps in there that need to kind of
Okay.
we need to go through an order of operations. So I'll just go ahead and do that. So what I like to do on the shoulder is I'll count in the first 4 ribs,
okay.
and by no means is this the gospel of how to break down an animal, right? Like there's a million and one ways to do this.
So when you bring that up, I know that I've got a worldwide audience.
Mm-hmm.
Are there differences country to country? So the United States to Canada, Canada to the United States to, say, England or places in Europe? where they have a different style of butchery?
I would say that North America, as well as like Australia, Ireland, and the UK, Scotland, they all share similarities in the way that they butcher.
Okay.
So we certainly adopted a lot of their methods. I would say once you get into different cultures like maybe Spain, in France, I know they do a lot more seaming out of whole muscles, but there's different cut charts that are available online that you could certainly research that. Again, this is one way within the framework of like a more North American style cutting, right?
Okay.
So because going into this with a blueprint, you have to know where you want to make your cuts because it's going to directly affect the next cut, right? So I opt for 4 ribs in because for me, it gives me a large enough shoulder.
Okay.
And it's also going to provide me with the highest real estate in the backbone here, which is where all our tenderest cuts come from. This is where we fetch the highest dollar amount and the most recognizable cuts for the consumer.
Sure. Okay.
So I'm basing it a lot of the retail method, but again, not the gospel. I don't want anybody to come at us.
No, that's no, and I mean, so there are different reasons. There are different ways then to break down a hog based on where the pieces are going to end up.
That's right. Yeah.
So for retail, it's going to be one way.
Sure.
In restaurants, they may do it a completely different way because they're looking for different cuts for what they're serving their customers.
For sure. And then
Okay.
you know what? The home butcher too will break it down according to their needs. So maybe you want a shoulder that's going to be this big because you've got, umpteen people coming over for a pig roast, or you're making pulled pork for the neighborhood. You need a lot more shoulder. So go ahead and go between the 7th and 8th rib.
You can play with it. Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. Yeah. It's flexible that way.
Well, and I remember when I lived in the north, when we lived in Thunder Bay and Nakina, and people would break down a moose.
Oh, okay.
And everybody had a different idea of how they wanted to break down the moose because they had different cuts that they'd like to serve their family.
Right.
So, it's personal choice, but within this framework, let's go 4.
Okay, great. So I count in 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Right, between the 4th and 5th rib. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to go between those two, and I'm going to bring my knife right out.
Okay.
Then I'm looking for the disc that most closely aligns with going through between those ribs, which is this one in this case. Okay. So I go through and I sever the connective tissue. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of straighten out my knife a little bit in relation to how my chops are going to be, because as we've already said, one cut affects the next. So I'm going to just bring my knife down and I'm going to cut through the back fat like so. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over. So if you don't mind grabbing this, we're just going to pull it towards me.
Okay.
So now what I've got is the cut between the ribs, and I've got that cut into the back fat, right?
Yep.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch directions with my knife, so I'm doing more of a push to line up with between that cut, okay? So I'll go, and I'll meet up with that cut, and I'm going to go again just to make sure that I've cut all that meat, okay? So we're good. Now what we're going to do is we'll, in tandem, flip it back over again, because now what I can do is I can just snap this off, right? And now I've got a good look at the shoulder itself.
So there's quite a few different muscles in here, and fat.
Mm-hmm. So the more exercise an animal is doing, it's far more relevant, like I should say relevant, but more apparent in pork, and I dare say even lamb too.
Okay.
Chicken for that matter. The muscles that do the most work are going to, in turn, have the most color in them.
Okay.
Okay, so then what we see is not only do we have different shades of pink in here, but we also have some really nice marbling not only in the muscle, but between the muscles as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that to me would say that this animal at least has gotten some exercise in its life. It's been fed a good diet that has put weight on well, that it's not put on too much weight so that we have way too much fat on the back. So yeah, there's just some different markers that I think somebody would be looking for when they cut into a side of pork to go, oh, okay, you know what? I'm very confident that this is going to be a nice eating experience.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's the front
Shoulder. Yep.
primal.
Yep.
And we're gonna deal with that separately.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we're gonna we're gonna break this whole thing down, and then we're gonna come back with separate videos of breaking down the primals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. I'll put the shoulder over there.
Okay.
And now, I think what's going to be easiest for us is we'll flip this whole thing around so we can be looking at it from this angle here. So
this is the center section of the animal.
that's right.
There's 2 primals in here?
Yes, exactly. So we've got our loin,
Okay.
and then we've got our belly.
Okay.
So we need to find 2 marking spots in order to kind of dictate where we're going to separate the 2.
Okay.
So for me, I like to go down where the ribs, you're not going to be able to see this very good, sorry guys. What I like to do is where the ribs kind of meet up with the backbone, I usually like to go about 2 inches down. That's just a marker for me. I know that this is going to give me a dramatic enough and long enough rib bone, so when these become rib chops, or we did it in the back ribs, that the bones are going to be long enough to accommodate both of those.
Okay.
So roughly about 2 inches there.
Okay.
And then I look for the tenderloin, which is this muscle that runs along right here.
Yep.
And I go find the tenderloin on the side here, and then I'm going to go roughly only about an inch or so down from the tenderloin. So I'll find my mark, and I'll make my mark over here.
Okay.
I come down roughly about an inch from the tenderloin, and I make my mark there.
Okay.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace a line between the 2, and let's hope I get it on the first one. There.
Excellent.
Okay?
Okay.
So from here, I'm just going to take my knife, and I'm going to cut all the way down to the table.
Cool.
Now it's a matter of getting the saw out. I'm going to let you do that.
So and then it's saw through the ribs.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. So if you want, you can kind of just move it just a little bit like so.
Okay.
Then I'm going to switch spots with you. And the best thing to do, I found, is try to cut all the ribs at once. So you want to keep, again,
So
your
you
saw,
wanna keep it
yeah,
flat.
exactly, as horizontal as possible. And it may take a little bit of you just getting it started up at the front there,
Okay.
where the shoulder came off, and then bring the saw down and try to cut all the ribs at the same time. And don't put a lot of effort into it because the saw requires you to put very little effort into it. There you go.
Okay, so I'm through the bone
Yep.
now.
So we're done with the saw.
Okay.
Now we just need to take a knife, and much like we did with the ham, we're just going to finish off that cut.
Just
Yep,
straight through, long motion right to the table.
that's right.
There we go.
Wonderful.
So, belly,
Yep,
loin.
that's right.
Cool. So this still has some ribs in it.
That's right. We're gonna explore all different options as we go through each piece.
Cool. So that is the breakdown of a side of pig to its primals.
Correct.
If I hadn't been fussing with the camera, that would have taken, what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
Oh my goodness, no! My friends, well, my colleagues and I have raced at this, and it takes literally minutes.
Yeah.
That's trained professionals racing.
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of people, they feel they need to do it really quickly. I'd rather do it well.
No. Listen, I provide my workshops 3 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, there's time.
Okay, so come on back, and in the next episode, we'll start breaking down each of the primals, and we'll go through the primals, 1 primal per episode.
Great.
Thanks, Jamie.
Of course.
See you again soon. Thanks for stopping by.